This computer. Welcome, Sensei Michael Calandra, to a show. Much appreciated your time, and I'm watching your podcast. I really enjoy it, and as we just spoke, I realized that I know one of your students here in UK. Again, thank you for your time. How are you today?
Good, very good. I appreciate you inviting me on. Um, so, glad I'm sure your audience reaches a bunch in Europe. So that's good for me too. And yeah, I appreciate you asking me on.
Cool. So you've got a really nice podcast, and I am envious of your dojo. Your dojo is very nice and always nice to look when you do your sessions with your students. You're doing Tai Chi, you're doing Jiu-Jitsu, you're doing a Isshin Ryu from Okinawa Karate. How did you get involved with all those martial arts?
So I started training in '79. I wanted to learn how to fight.
Mhm.
That's what I wanted to do. So I was a member of the local YMCA, and I went there, and they had karate, and it just so happened the guy that was teaching karate taught Isshin. I started training in Isshinru first. I was training in Isshinru for probably about almost 2 years. And then I started training in Iaido. I used to travel into New York City twice a week to travel in Iaido. I was probably about 16 years old or 17 when I started training in EI. So I did that. Then I also started training in Shindo Musaru Jodo, which I trained and taught for many years. I'm not teaching it currently. And then I also started jujitsu, so Sui Shitsuru Jiu-Jitsu. So I've been doing that for over 40 years. And probably about, I want to say, well, about 25 years ago now, I met Chen Zhanghua and I began training in Chen style Tai Chi Chuan practical method. Why I liked that was his approach was one to teach it as a martial art. So it wasn't just the Tai Chi you often see in the park, people just kind of moving and doing the form. He taught fighting applications and all the principles. Then I was also invited to a seminar with Lu Changyi, the headmaster of Shihei Kwan, Feeding Crane Kung Fu. Trained with him for several years, so I practiced that art also. Um, and then Patrick McCarthy came to our dojo many years ago, and I knew he had trained with Sugino Yoshio Sensei in Katori Shintaru. I asked him if he could do an introduction to that, and he did. And then a short time later, I was in Japan with my group training with Sugino Sensei himself. So I've been doing Katori Shinto for probably about 15 years now. So those are all the things I do. I've done other things too here and there, but those are the main things I do. So yeah, I teach several different martial arts. So, you know.
How do you make it fit together?
So the thing is I keep them pretty separate. And what I mean by that is when I'm teaching Isshinryu, I'm teaching Isshinryu. When I'm teaching Matayoshi Kobudo, Matayoshi Kobudo, I left out. I've been doing that for over 30 years. Trained with Kakiya Yoshiaki. Um, so I keep them separate. If I'm teaching Kobudo, I'm teaching Kobudo. If I'm teaching Katori Shinto, I'm doing that. Now, are there common threads that run through all these arts? Yes, there are. Um, so I look for those common threads. I see there's things in karate, that are definitely in taiji,
Mhm.
practical method. Practical method's older than karate. So you see elements of the taiji in the karate. You don't see the karate in the taiji. Um, but so those similarities I look to when it comes to the empty hand stuff. Um, I see certain things in the jiu-jitsu I teach too, where the principles that they teach in taiji also exist within the jiu-jitsu. So what I try to do is I try to teach a principle-based approach. So it's not so much, well, my teacher said do it exactly like this. Yeah, obviously in the beginning when I trained with one of my teachers, I have to follow him to the letter.
Mhm.
But in the case of someone like Chen Zhanghua, he's also teaching us principles, and what he's saying is you follow the principle. And he often says, if you see me doing something wrong, if I'm not following the principle, don't do what I'm doing. follow the principle. Um, so that's what I think helps me to keep them separate. So it's interesting. Like I've traveled to South America 3 times, and I've only taught Kobudo there,
Okay.
right? Mariyoshi Kobudo. So depending on where I go, some people think of me as a jiu-jitsu guy. Some people think of me as a tai chi guy. Some people think of me as a karate guy. So, and then, some people train with me in multiple arts, like Ray Dickey, the guy we both know, he trains in multiple arts with me. Obviously, a bunch of people in my New York school and several people here train in more than one art out here in Arizona. But that's the other thing. You're not required, if you train with me, to train in everything. So it's kind of like a smorgasbord. You can pick the art you like. And so my school's kind of unique, not so much out here because it's newer out here, but in New York, you may have a guy teaching in the karate class, and then the next class, he's maybe only a green belt because he started that art later. But the guy that was a green belt in the karate class is a black belt in that art. And so it's a unique thing where you have, this kind of stuff going on. And we've never had a problem. I mean, people respect the fact that the one guy, you know, is senior in that art and the other guy is junior. So, yeah. So I'm lucky. I don't seem to have difficulty with going from one thing to the other, although like my Tai Chi master said to me on more than one occasion, he said, "You're the only guy I've ever seen that can teach these things, all these different things, and keep them clear." So,
Must be
so I
very
don't know.
like
Maybe that's my gift. I don't know.
yeah, maybe like engineering mind. My wife is like that. She done Aikido, she done Kung Fu, she done karate, and she can keep them separate.
Okay,
I done wrestling and karate, and I can't. It's all kind of mixing. But she's long line of engineers. My grandfather, her dad is the engineer as well, so maybe that's kind of engineering setup mind.
right.
Can you
And it's
tell us
interesting
more?
when I train with them. Go ahead.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say it's interesting because sometimes I'm with a student who does several arts with me, and I'll be working with him privately, and he'll say to me, "Oh, can we go over this form in Isshin Ryu?" And I'll do that, and then out of the blue he'll go, "Oh, can we review that thing in Mariyoshi Kobudo?" And we go right into that. Or "Oh, can we review this and go right into that?" And I've had more than one student say to me, they go, "Boy, you just could go right from one to the other." And I've attended seminars where I watched instructors have to go look at their iPad
Wow.
like to remind them of a form or whatever it was they were trying to teach. And so I seem to be lucky in that my memory's good and I'm able to remember the different things and be able to go from one to the other. So you were going to ask me a question?
Yes. So Isshin Ryu in Poland at the time where I was non-existent. I only know a little bit from the books and from the, research of different styles. My teacher was always encouraging us to reach out to different styles and learn. In UK, I understand it's not many dojos either. Could you give us a brief history of the Isshin Ryu and what's so special about it and why do you love it so much?
Okay. So there are several dojos in the UK. So I have a
Mhm.
student under me in the UK who has like 7 dojo. And then
Okay.
there's Ray Dickey. He's also teaching and training. Um, So Isshinryu was established around 1956, okay, by Tatsuo Shimabuku. He had studied with Kian Chotaku, Chojun Miyagi, Choki Motobu, and Taira Shinken. Um, so we do a lot of Kian kata. We do some Motobu kata,
Mhm.
and we do a couple of Goju kata. We also have Kobudo. Some of our Kobudo comes from Kian Sensei, Tokumini no Kun. And the other bow kata we have, and one of the side kata we have come from Taira Shinken. One of the side kata was created by Tatsuo Shimabuku himself. That's called Kusan Kusai. He based it on the Kusan Kukata. We also do Hamahiga no Tuifa, which is Tuifa kata that comes also from the Taira lineage. Recently, I created a nunchaku kata for Isshinryu that I'm actually going to introduce at my New York seminars in a couple of weeks. I already mentioned it to Master Shimabuku in Okinawa when I was there. He thought it was a good idea that I created the nunchaku kata. He likes nunchaku, Master Shimabuku Kichido. His father never used nunchaku. Um,
Mhm.
so I think what I like about Isshinryu, and again, now this is almost 50 years in, right?
Mhm.
Um, the body mechanics don't harm the body. So the movements are more, I think, are more natural and they don't harm the body if you practice it right. Some of the Japanese styles, I think, with the way they stand and the way they move, like I'll use an example. A lot of the early pioneers of Shotokan karate, many of them have had hip replacement and knee replacement. For myself, I'm training, it's going to be 46 years in April. The only issue I have with my body is I have a left knee that's a problem, and I was born with that. My left kneecap sits on a weird angle. So, through all the years now that I'm 61 years old, I've got a lot of arthritis in there. But the knee's still fully functional. I can still do everything I need to do. It's not so bad. So that's one of the things I think is interesting with Isshin. Isshin has some unique things. We do a vertical fist punch,
Mhm.
which people like to say Tatsuo Shimabuku created this punch. He didn't create the punch. The vertical fist has been around a long time in many different martial arts. The one thing we do that is unique is we place the thumb on top, right?
Mhm.
And the reason we place the thumb on top is it raises two ligaments here in the wrist, which help prevent the wrist from buckling when you hit something.
Mhm.
That's a fact. There's no disputing that. That 100% helps to strengthen the wrist. Um, we block with the muscle, so we don't block like this, taking all the impact on one bone. We
Mhm.
take the impact on the two bones. All right. So those are some of the things. You'll hear other guys say things like, "We only kick below the waist." That's nonsense. When we do kata, I know I myself kick solar plexus height. Master Shimabuku has told me to kick solar plexus height, and he said it's okay if sometimes you want to stretch the legs and kick to the head.
Mhm.
But then he adds, in self-defense, kick below the waist. Don't be trying to kick somebody in the head in a self-defense situation. It's probably not a good idea. Um, the other thing that's, I think, a little bit unique with Isshinryu is the fact that it is a karate and kobudo system. So you have some styles of karate on Okinawa that may do one or two kobudo kata or only one kobudo kata. In Isshinryu, we have three sai kata, three bo kata, tonkwa, and now nunchaku kata. And then we have eight empty hand kata. So it's a pretty balanced system in terms of it having both those things. And when Tatsuo Shimabuku created it, he did create it as a karate and kobudo system. The early students on Okinawa, which were mostly U.S. Marines that were serving there in the United States Marine Corps, they came back with the eight hand kata and they came back with two weapons kata. Um, so you have it's always had Kobudo in it, and when he trained with Taira Shinken Sensei, he added even more Kobudo. The interesting thing is Tatsuo Shimabuku really did not consider himself a Kobudo master, even though he really liked Kobudo and he taught it. And he did tell several first generation students, look, if you really want to be good at the Kobudo, you should go train with a Kobudo master, someone who really, really focuses on the Kobudo. And even myself, I did that. I went to Matayoshi Kobudo. I studied with Gakiya Sensei. I don't think there's as much difference in the different Kobudo styles as people like to make out. I think there's only so many ways you can use a bow and a sai and I mean, everybody wants to say it's Coke and Pepsi and, it's McDonald's and Burger King. They all want to
Mhm.
have their different, say, well, we do it like this, but I really think there's a lot more similarities than there are differences between many of the systems. So Tatsuo Shimabuku also placed a pretty heavy emphasis on self-defense. Um, he had a knife defense curriculum. He had a ground fighting curriculum. He taught joint locking techniques. He taught throws. He taught joint throws. Um, I just feel for me it was great. I was a police officer for 22 years and, had to many times use my martial arts for real. And, Isshinryu never let me down. I mean, it never let me down, you know, so.
That's great. Kind of, this is the problem, and I said that before on the podcast, right? Because I'm teaching karate. I'm from completely modern style. I'm from offshore of Kyokushin, unknown anywhere, only in Poland.
Okay.
Um, and always my problem is that I'm teaching something, and I've been told, "Oh, this is great for self-defense," blah blah blah. But I've been fighting twice in my life on the street, and it's kind of like I don't really want to say it's self-defense because I never tested, but you guys, like yourself, who've been in the police, kind of pass us that message that actually karate does work as a self-defense system or a restraint system for a police and bodyguards or whatever. So it's kind of always nice for me to hear kind of reinforcement that it is working because you have a chance to test it, let's say, on the battlefield in the quotes.
So it's interesting. Some techniques I discovered when I went to use them didn't work right.
Hmm.
And I didn't blame the technique. I blamed the way I was doing the technique,
Hmm.
which means the way I'd been shown the technique wasn't the proper way to do it.
Hmm.
So when something like that would happen, I would go back to the dojo and I'd get a few of my senior guys, the guys that were real serious about training, and I'd figure out how to actually do that technique that would work the best. And then when I move forward and that technique would be used in an actual situation, it always worked a lot better. So one
Okay.
of the things I'll say is one of my things with modern karate is it's become so sport emphasis. If you train for sport, training for sport does not mean you'll be prepared for self-defense.
Mm.
So, and it's the same thing. Like I don't train for sport. So if I were to go into a sport fighting competition, I probably wouldn't do very well because that's not how I train.
Mhm.
I train to fight the people that are going to try to harm me. So those are the techniques I work against. In karate, we also often see like when people are working against punches in karate, the one student stands in this karate position and he comes in with this nice karate punch, and the other guy does his technique. Like in my dojo, that's not how we train. I mean, the person throws a real punch at you, whether, and it might be variations of punches, maybe a straighter punch or a big looping punch like a street fighter might throw, to work how to defend against that. So that's the one thing I think is missing. It's definitely missing in Okinawa, 100%. I mean, Okinawa, they've painted themselves into the corner of sport, which is fine. Again, my position in life is whatever makes you happy.
Mhm.
So if doing sport karate makes you happy, I'm all for that. But don't tell me that the sport karate you're doing is automatically going to work in a real situation,
Mm.
because that's not going to be necessarily be the case. Now you may get lucky, and you may, if it's one on one, it might be fine. But that's one of the things I'd like to see karate go kind of on a dual path where, and I think in the West we do more of this. In the West, I think we're more interested in self-defense. We're
Mhm.
more interested in the older style of karate. Whereas in Okinawa, it's so safe. I just think they've lost that kind of interest. I think they're
Mm.
so into the sport aspect and now also tourism aspect. Karate's become the number one tourist attraction in Okinawa.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I see a lot of
yeah.
people going
And
and automatically coming back with a promotional belt, black belt, and it's like a
yeah.
souvenir, right?
Yeah, it almost is like a souvenir. I mean, look, there's still teachers that aren't just going to hand out downgrades. Um, but you've got to find them. My thing has always been I don't have a problem with people having rank as long as they're able to do what the rank represents.
Mhm.
So if a guy tells me he's a fifth degree black belt in Isshin Ryu, and when I look at him, I don't think he's even past brown belt. Well, then I'm, that's a problem. But if I look at the guy and his technique is good and his speed and power is good, I say, okay, well, that guy actually worked for it and deserves that piece of paper he has. But, I'm sure you're training long enough to know there's a lot of people that get that piece of paper that, let's just say, the skill is not up to what the paper says,
Mm. It's
you know.
that's the reason why for now nearly 20 years I'm completely independent. I learn from whoever I can, and I don't belong to any. Well, I belong to organizations, but it's the camaraderie, friendship, and we seeing each other. Nobody tells what to do. It's just enjoying the time together. That's my main goal in karate now.
Right.
Longevity and
But
and
and listen,
enjoyment.
you know, Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's something to be said for being on your own. So like I've been with Master Shimabuku since 1979. I've been in his association. What I like about the Isshin Ryu Karate Association is that it's a lifetime membership.
Hmm.
So you pay it once, that's it, you're in. The only other times you send money to Okinawa is if, like, when as a matter of fact, today I just received a bunch of certificates from him that I sent for some students for their black belts and membership certificates, and that's it. I mean, other than that, there's not yearly dues or anything like that. He's never called me and said, "Hey, why aren't you sending me memberships or why aren't you doing this?" Like, it's very mellow and laid back. And I was in other organizations where, if the dues were due in January and you didn't pay them by January 2nd, they were calling you on the phone asking where your yearly dues are. And you know, and that's one of the problems I see with a lot of the organizations when they're yearly dues is that it becomes about collecting dues.
Hmm.
The guy who's running the organization begins to count on that money coming in. Uh, and that's what it becomes about. I mean, I'm in a few organizations myself. One I was invited to be in because I was a senior don in Isshinryu, and they had no senior dons in Isshinryu, and they just asked me if I would come in, and it was no cost to me. Um, so I'm in a couple of organizations like that too. Um, but but yeah, I get asked on a fairly regular basis to join associations, and usually I just turn them down or I ignored them. It's the same thing. I get told um, I've been inducted into a Hall of Fame. I probably get one of those letters or emails or messages, probably one every 3 or 4 months. And all I have to do is bring a table full of people, and it's $200 for each person, and I get this plaque, and I'm inducted. I don't even respond to those messages. I literally, I don't even respond to them. I mean, I'm just, but again, a lot of people do, and they go and they're excited about that. They're getting this, what they believe is a big recognition, which really all it is it's a money-making thing for the guy that runs the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So I avoid them. I stay out of them like the plague. My ego doesn't need it. That's the other thing I think about being a police officer and using the martial arts for real. you know, um, Winning a trophy, winning a medal is very nice. It's great. You know, I don't, I think it's great for people that want to do that. Um, if you want to be in one of these Hall of Fames and pay to be in it, and great. But, I just think doing martial arts for real, where it had to save my life and the lives of other people, all this other stuff becomes just kind of like not important,
Mm.
like to me personally. Like, um, what's important to me is the training and, like you said, the camaraderie, the health, um, training in a way that maintains my physical health.
Mhm.
Uh, one of the comments that was said to me when I was in Okinawa was how physically fit I am. So bunch of the different Westerners that I saw there was saying, "Boy, you're really fit, Mike." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I work at it. I mean, I'm trying to get other people to be physically fit. I can't
Mm.
be, the joke in my dojo for many years was that my students would say to me, "Sensei, you'll never make eighth degree." And the first time they said that to me, I said, "Why won't I ever make eighth degree?" And they said, "Because you're not fat enough."
Yeah, it seems to be
And
that
because,
with the rank the belly grows.
yeah. So, and when I first went to Okinawa and spent time with Kichiro Shimabuku, Master Shimabuku said to me, he says, the school goes as the sensei goes. If the sensei gets fat, the students get fat. If the sensei only talks about karate, the students will get bored and leave. You have to lead by example. If you lead by example, the students will follow you and you'll have a successful dojo. And I took that to heart, and that's what I've worked at, you know. And I have students all over the place. And now with, the YouTube channel and everything, I really feel I have students and friends, everywhere in the martial arts, you know. So,
Are you
I
getting
mean,
in
look at
trouble?
this, right? So
Yeah.
you reached out for me based on seeing my podcast or one of my other videos, right? And so now I feel like I have another friend in the UK.
Cool. Um, are you getting in a lot of troubles with your content? The example is today. I was listening about your applications and one step kumite, and you said, "Oh, if you believe in one punch, one kill, you're living in a fairy tale." That's kind of against most of the karate narratives.
Well, again, it's a narrative, right?
Mm.
It's a selling point, right? Um, Kentucky Fried Chicken has those 11 spices and herbs that make it taste so good, right? Karate has this one punch, one kill. Now, can you kill a man with one punch or one kick? Absolutely. Happened in Okinawa in 1995 at the pre-tournament. Guy was hit at the pre-tournament, hit in the head with a roundhouse kick and killed, right? At the
Mm.
tournament in Okinawa. Okay. Um, there's been plenty of other times when I started in 79, but even in the early 80s, every once in a while you'd read about in Black Belt magazine. Remember when I started, no protective gear. So
Mm.
you did point sparring, you expected to have control. There was no pads on the feet, no pads on the hand, no chest protectors, right? So, every once in a while, there'd be a story in Black Belt magazine that someone died in a dojo that got hit, right? Yeah, so of course it can happen. But I can tell you, having been in a lot of fights, there were times I hit a guy and I knocked him out with one punch or dropped him with one punch. And that could be hitting him to the body or hitting him to the head. And there were other times where I had to strike the guy multiple times before I was able to put him down. And people say, well, why is that? What, maybe your punches were off that day. Okay, maybe they were. Could be. But all you have to do is look at the UFC and look at a boxing match, and you'll see a fighter come up against a guy, and that fighter is has got 10 KOs in 10 fights. He's knocked out 10 opponents he's faced. And now he comes up against the guy and he's unable to knock that guy out. And he's hitting the guy. He's hitting him in the head. He's hitting him, but he can't knock him out. Okay, did the guy that has the 10 knockouts, previous knockouts, did his punch all of a sudden get weak? No, I don't think so. I think the guy he's facing has the ability to withstand that abuse and take those shots. And we see it in boxing all the time. So it's just I think you're people shouldn't kid themselves when it comes to real self-defense. Real self-defense is extremely ugly. It's brutal. There's no martial arts in it. So a real fight doesn't look anything like what we do in the dojo. A real fight is brutal and nasty, right? Um, and sometimes you're able to take the guy out right away with one technique, and other times, again, I'm not saying it's going to be long because most fights do not last that long. They're over rather quickly. But this idea that you have to you're everybody's going to be able to develop this ability to with one punch kill someone. I just don't buy it. It's 100% possible, but there are a lot of very tough people out there that I mean, I'll give you for instance. I saw a video of a prisoner that was stabbed 26 times in prison.
Mm.
He walked away from it.
Yeah, especially if people are on the drugs and stuff, it just simply doesn't stop them, isn't it, right?
Well, yeah, that's another thing. I can tell you now, if they're on drugs, depending on the drug, you can hit them all day. Now they may be in bad shape later on when they come down off their high, but that doesn't help you when the guy's trying to kill you.
Exactly.
So that's why I say too, like in situations like that, you better know how to choke somebody
Mm.
because your strikes may not work. The guy just going to keep fighting. So you got to put him in a position where you can choke him out because I don't care how high you are, you need air and
Hmm.
you need blood going to your brain. Um, so most karate schools, I don't really see them working on choking techniques. I think the UFC's changed things a little bit. I think some schools have woken up a little bit and realized. And again, I laugh at this notion that the UFC showed that, you have to do all this stuff. But all this stuff was in karate. All this stuff was in jiu-jitsu. The strikes in jiu-jitsu are designed to incapacitate, or maybe kill the opponent, depending on how lucky you get, right? The joint locks are for control. If you throw a guy, the intention is to throw him on his head. When we train, like you have the mats, right? I have mats. When we throw students, we can't throw them on their head. We have to throw them in the training way so they can slap out and get back up. Or we're
Mm.
going to be spending a lot of time in court when we're
Yeah.
sued, right? But I think sometimes the modern martial arts don't realize what they have in it because they're so caught up in the sport aspect and have eliminated a lot of these very interesting training things that we do. I do knife defense in my dojo. I do gun disarms. I'm constantly showing chokes, fighting against a wall, fighting on the floor, fighting against multiple opponents. I mean, I just find doing all those different aspects of training makes for an interesting dojo and an exciting class. And I don't do everything every class, but
Mm.
I try to vary every class and do something different every class.
Excellent. I ask this question to everybody. So, what was the impact of karate for your mental health? Was there any negative or positive?
That's an interesting question. Well, I definitely think it's been positive, although I constantly say anybody that's doing martial arts for a really long time has to be
Yeah,
maybe
definitely.
a little crazy, right? Um, uh, I think it's been positive. I'll give you an example. So, in terms of being a police officer, I went in the police department. I was already a second degree black belt, and I had already been training in jiu-jitsu for quite a while. So I had Isshin Ryu Karate and Sosui Shitsuru Jiu-Jitsu. Um, I go in the police department, I come out. Obviously, the first few times I'm fighting criminals, it doesn't go as well. I mean, I come out on top, luckily. Um, but the confidence built, right? And then that mental confidence where, even if I was facing multiple opponents, because we patrolled a lot by ourselves. Transit police officers patrolled by ourselves. So
Mhm.
a lot of times you're facing more than one bad guy. Um, so I think training in the martial arts and seeing that it worked, even if it didn't work perfectly in the beginning, because like I tell everybody else, it's like when you watch a baby learn to walk, they take that first step, they fall down, they get back up, they take two steps, they fall down. When you're first engaging in actual combat, you're not that good. Like initially, you're going to make mistakes, whatever those mistakes are. Things aren't going to work right. And you're going to have to evaluate and figure it out. But if you keep doing it and doing it and doing it, it's like the baby that learns eventually how to run. You get better at it. And as you get better at it, you're more relaxed, you're more confident. Now, as far as negative mental health, so I'll give you an example. My first instructor turned out to not be a very good person.
Mhm.
So I left him after about 10 years and I went out on my own. Um, he spent the next 7 or 8 years basically trying to destroy my whole life.
Mhm.
So obviously, that wasn't a good thing mentally for the martial arts. Now, luckily for me, everything he tried to do had the opposite effect, right? So, like, if I say his name, most people don't even know who he was in Ishinru. And he's passed away now. He passed away 2 years ago. Um, But, you know, again, so that was, and what he showed me, and I tell people all the time, I said, every experience, and I teach my children this, every experience is a good experience, even if it's a bad experience,
Mhm.
because it teaches you something. And training with him and seeing the way he acted taught me how not to be. So I try to make sure I try to treat people with respect. Um, if people say to me, "Hey, Sensei, I don't want to train with you anymore," for whatever reason, I don't hold it against them. I don't get upset about it. Good luck with you. Let's make. Hopefully, we can stay friends. But that wasn't the case when I left him. Um, and I dealt with that for several years, and then finally it stopped. Um, because the headmaster of jiu-jitsu called a meeting. He wanted me there. So it was the first time I'd seen him since I left. And I sat right next to him. And now he saw that I'm there. If you're such a tough guy, well, here I am. And he didn't do anything. And his students saw he didn't do anything. And from that point on, I guess he realized it was a waste of time to come after me anymore. And obviously I've been pretty lucky. I mean, I'm pretty successful in the martial arts. Um, now I've got this YouTube channel that's taken on a life of its own.
Mm,
I've been lucky. I travel all over the world teaching and training and doing things, but for me, it's always about the training. Um, that's to me the most important thing. That's the thing I still enjoy the most. I enjoy training the most, and then I enjoy teaching the most. The YouTube channel's a fun thing for me. If it gets to a point where it's not fun, I won't do it anymore.
mm.
You know, but it's fun, and I'm and it what's happening with it was something I didn't anticipate when I started it, which was um like it, and I'm trying to use it now to promote some of those guys. So like the guys that write books and the guys that are doing research, I'm having them on for interviews. Um, Yesterday I interviewed Mario McKenna. And he's
Awesome.
translated a whole bunch of the old, yeah. So next week that he'll be on the podcast. Tomorrow on the podcast is Scott Mertz. He just wrote a book, Ruhoru, that just came out, and he's doing a lot of very good research. So in terms of the channel, I want to keep that going. Where I think right now in terms of karate, we're living in kind of a golden age of research, meaning a lot of people are translating these old documents, they're translating these old books, and it's great to have that information, you know. Um, Obviously for martial arts nerds like myself, guys that are really into all the history and everything else, some people don't care about that stuff, and that's fine too. But yeah, so yeah, I think overall I'd say it's been a huge positive for my mental health, you know.
Amazing. Awesome. But it's not all with your channel. Obviously, very successful. I see you skyrocketing with the views and subscribers. But then I think, and that's the illness of karate, that despite karate being promoting diligence, honor, and humility, the quite opposite things happened, like your journey to Okinawa, spark up quite a few people being jealous and bad mouthing and all the politics. Um, and I think it is just I don't know, lack of check with their ego and kind of jealousy. What's your thoughts about it? Because you experienced it and you had a nice episode about it.
Well, recently I was promoted to 10th degree by the headmaster of Isshin Ryu.
Congratulations.
So that was something, thank you. Like that was something, like I tell people, when I was 15 years old and I walked into the karate school, the thought that I would ever be promoted to 10th degree black belt by the headmaster of a martial art, I would have told you were crazy. Like there's no way that's ever going to happen. And, until it happened, I would have still told you were crazy. Like, okay, I made ninth dan and I was like, okay, that's it. Like, that's it.
Mm,
I'm good. I'm done. I don't have to worry about anything else. Right. And then out of the blue, he promotes me to 10th degree. And, like people like Patrick McCarthy and some of the other people in Okinawa said to me, they said, what makes it a little bit different is one, I'm a foreigner.
mhm,
So I'm a foreigner getting promoted to that rank by an Okinawan headmaster. And the other thing is I'm within the lineage. So it's Kion Shotoku, Tatsuo Shimabuku, Kichiro Shimabuku, and Mike Calandra. And I'm in the lineage. A bunch of them explain to me now that in Okinawa, a lot of people get promoted by associations. They get promoted by a group of sensei, and that's how they get promoted to 10th dan. So they were telling me, so my thing was a little bit unique, which I didn't even realize until some people started to. And Andreas Quast is someone too that pointed that out to me. So, it's interesting. I've jokingly said I have more friends since I got promoted to 10th dan,
mhm,
right? And a lot of people reached out to me to congratulate me, which I really appreciated. But it's also funny the people that didn't reach out to me,
mhm.
that I know, right? So, okay, and that's okay too. Again, I'm old enough and been around long enough that I don't take any of this stuff personal, right? Um, I think there's a problem in the martial arts where, um, like you said, it's a little bit about ego. Um, and again, in my case, I kind of, even though I'm very well known and I'm out there in the public eye, for the most part, I still kind of keep to myself when it comes to training.
Mhm.
Like I'm not involved with a lot of groups and a lot of different things where I'm going to these things and training. But I was a little surprised and taken aback when I came back and McCarthy Sensei reached out to me and said this certain individual had reached out to him and said I was a fraud, which McCarthy Sensei, like he told me, he found quite funny. He said, people can call you a lot of things. I think calling you a fraud in the martial arts is a bit of a stretch. And basically said I was garbage as a person. And, again, I can't control what other people think of me.
Mhm.
So, but also I look at where it's coming from and say, should I really take this too serious? And in this case, the answer was no. I decided to do that podcast on envy, resentment, and jealousy because I thought it would be a good topic, and that maybe if I raised it and explained it and almost did it as a warning for younger people that are coming up in the martial arts, like don't become part of this.
Mhm.
Um, you know, why am I worried about what someone else is doing? Why?
Mhm.
I should be worried about what I'm doing. I shouldn't be, it's like you know, don't covet what your neighbor has. Worry about what you have. So I just keep doing what I'm doing, right? And I just keep training and you'd be amazed like when that podcast came out on McCarthy Sensei's post came out. I mean, I got inundated with messages from people. Don't stop doing what you're doing. We all appreciate what you're doing. You're doing so much for martial arts. Just keep doing it. So again, one person doing what they did, that's the person that I should take serious and everybody else I
Mhm.
shouldn't take serious. So I think people coming up in martial arts need to be careful of it. And one of the things I tell them is if your instructor says to you somebody's a bad guy, oh that guy's a bad guy. All right, I know he's your instructor and everything, and you can take his opinion, but before you say that guy's a bad guy, maybe you should find out for yourself if that guy's a bad guy.
Mhm.
Like, you know, and don't, again, just because someone else says something about somebody, don't go by that. Find out for yourself. Find out for yourself. Um, you might be surprised. You might find that you have a lot more friends, and you might find that you have a lot more in common. If I went by what certain other people told me about certain other people, I wouldn't have some of the friendships I have.
Mhm.
Oh, stay away from that guy, Mike. Oh, that guy's bad news. Don't, no, I'm telling you. And then I meet the guy and I'm like, my initial thought is, what was this other guy talking about? Like,
Mhm.
what do you mean this guy was bad news? I mean, he's a nice guy. He's treated me great. I mean, no problems. I mean, maybe you have a problem with him, but he's been great to me. So, and that's another thing. I mean, just because you might have a problem with someone, well, that means I have to have a problem with him. And we see this all the time in martial arts. And that's the problem. The problem is people thinking like this.
Mhm.
And I don't know what's going to fix it. I don't think it's going to get fixed because I think it's a human nature problem. You
Mhm.
know, we see it in everything, right? You're at work, right? And you work really hard, and you get promoted, and you get a raise at work. And three of your coworkers congratulate you and tell you great. And three others congratulate you, but behind your back, they're saying, why'd that guy get the raise? Why did that guy get the
Mhm.
promotion? I should have got it, right? He shouldn't have gotten it. And we see the same thing in the martial arts. It's a human nature problem, right? You
Yeah.
know? Um, so I don't think it's going to get fixed. I just think we have to be careful ourselves. We have to worry about ourselves. Don't worry about what other people are doing, you know, and try to do the best you can do. If you try to do the best you can do, then I think you'll be okay, and just treat people the way you want to be treated. I mean, that's, don't abuse your students, I mean, we all hear horror stories about the stuff that goes on in martial arts, right?
Mhm.
And it's important that we don't fall into those traps. Um, because once you go down a certain path, it's tough. It's not good. Um, you know. So yeah, so I mean, I just think we, you know, it's funny when I went to Okinawa, I was hanging out with a Goju guy, a Matsubashi Shorin guy, an Okinawan Kempo guy. Obviously, I was hanging out with my Isshin Ryu Karate sensei. I was hanging out with Patrick McCarthy sensei. I met a 10th Dan from Matsubashi Shorin. We all got along. Everybody had a great time. I mean, James Pankowitz was nice enough to ask me to teach a class at his dojo. I don't do
Mhm.
Matsubashi, but he says, "Hey, you have a lot of real experience. Could you teach some knife defense?" I said, "Sure." Right. It'd be good if there was more of that, you know,
Mm.
but we don't, it's one of the problems, right? We guard things. We don't want to give. Like me, I show whatever people want to show, whatever people want to learn, I teach them, you know? Um, so yeah, I mean, it's like with the politics, right? The politics is another problem. You know, when you become a politician and you're no longer a martial artist, well, I can't take you too serious
Mm.
because you're a politician. Okay. Um, when the running of the association becomes more important than the training, okay, well, you've become a politician. You're not really a sensei anymore. You're a politician.
Mhm.
Um, so, I have no problem with organizations. Look, I'm in a few, you're in a few, whatever it is, right? And but the thing is to keep it real and realize, well, what's important? What's important is the training. That's what's important. All the other stuff is just, you know, whatever it is. It's not
Mm.
it's not real, right? Um, you know, you've got certain organizations on Okinawa, umbrella organizations. Well, we want all the styles to also do these kata. Okay, why? Who are you to tell me I'm doing Ishinru? Who are you to tell me that now I need to do these other kata because you want me to do them, but you don't do Ishinru,
Mm.
right? So again, it's about power, right? It's a power play, you know. Um, but and yeah, again, most of these big organizations, eventually, what happens to them, they seem to go away. And of course, somebody starts up a new one, but most of them seem to go away. And I really think it's important that the main focus be on the training and the teaching. That's what we should be focusing on, you know, and not all the BS that surrounds everything, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I was when I was interviewing one of the guys from the Kyokushin side, who is a child development teacher. He gave me a interesting question, which I'm now asking most of my guests, which I think is very interesting. So he asked me if you would use as little words as possible to describe your core values for your dojo or yourself, what that would be. So for me, is a strong and caring because if you're strong, you can take care of other people and you've got that power to be. What would be yours and your dojo?
I think mine would be authentic and integrity.
Hmm.
So I try to be authentic in the things I do and the things I teach, and I try to have integrity for myself. Um, Again, the physical training's the physical training. I mean, I think we're all doing the physical training. Um, but I think having a strong moral component in the dojo, I think is very important. I mean, we're teaching people to harm other people. And in like UFC, a lot of UFC gyms and these other places, I don't know that there's a strong moral component being taught. Where I think in traditional schools, I think that training is built into it. The style of jujitsu I do, we have a list of directions. In karate, we have the dojo rules, right?
Hmm.
So you have these core values, that hopefully, if you follow them, you will have high integrity, right? The physical skill will come to anybody if you work with them long enough. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? But is that person going to be a quality person? Are they going to be a quality human being? That's what I think in my dojo. I'd say, so, and this is what I'll tell you. So throughout the years, I've brought in a lot of guest instructors. Every single guest instructor, the first thing they say is, after the seminar's done, they say to me, I can't believe how nice all your students are.
Mm. A great thing to hear.
That's what I want. And then they were also complimentary about their skill. But the first thing has always been, man, Mike, everybody's so nice in your place, you know? Um, so, so again, I think if the sensei sets the example and the students see how he is and they follow him, um, then I think it's good, you know? Uh, I've had a lot of students that started with me when they're very young, 4 years old. We take them at 4 years old in the New York dojo, and they stay around. Some of them, many of them have stayed around till they went off to college, and they're all very successful, and they're all really good human beings. And that was the goal all along. Yeah, karate's great. I'm glad they stuck around because it helped me pay my bills when I was,
Mhm.
renting space in New York. The uh, but the fact that they turned out to be good human beings, I think, is what's important. You know. So those are the two words I would use: authenticity and also, integrity.
Awesome. Makes sense. Really good. Um, you said you left your dojo, you moved away. I've got one of the friends who had an accident, so he couldn't train for some time, and he had a mixed feeling because he had to allow his students to take over and teach, and he realized that, oh, it's actually okay, they don't need me. But then in the same way, he said, hey, they don't need me. Um, how did you feel leaving your dojo, giving to your students?
So 2 years before I moved, I had all the black belts. Now, so you have to realize I have students under me that are seventh dans, sixth dans, fifth dans. 'Cause they're training a long time. They've been with me a long time. So I got them all together, all the senior black belts, and I said, okay, I'm just letting you know in 2 years I'm moving to Arizona. And then I said to them, I said, I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking I'm not going to move to Arizona. You're thinking I'm saying this, but I'm not going to go, then I'm going to stay. I'm
Mhm.
telling you now, I'm not. I'm leaving. So you guys need to make a decision. Um, Either couple of you, a few of you can decide to take over the school. One of you can decide to take over the school, and it doesn't have to be the most senior guy. Um, you know, and I'll help you and and I said, but you've got to make this decision soon. So if we're going to do this, we can start working on this process. Not that the process is a month before I leave.
Mhm.
And the one guy came to me. He wasn't my most senior student. He was a retired lieutenant who had worked with me. He had run businesses before. After he retired from the police department, he'd become a Chinese medicine doctor, licensed in acupuncture, herbs, and a licensed massage therapist. A very smart guy. And he put it to me this way. He said, Sensei, I think I want the challenge of trying to run the school. I want to challenge myself. I want to try to do it. I said, okay. So what I started doing then is I started running less classes. So what I would do is I'd be there, but I would let them teach. And I would step back and let them teach. And initially it was funny. So I'd be there, they'd finish with the warm ups and stuff, and they'd go to me and say, okay, Sensei, what do you want us to do? I said, you decide. Okay, so now initially they're like, but then they started realizing, okay, I have to be ready to do something.
Mm.
And they started teaching. And then I would go in the office and sit in the office and I would just listen to them teach. So I couldn't see what they were doing. I'm listening. And I would come out and I'd take them on the side and I say, okay, the way you explained that was good, but you might want to include this, or you might want to also say this. All right, I saw how you showed that technique, but don't forget to include this. So for a year and a half, and they noticed it. They finally noticed it and said, "Hey, we noticed you're not coming out and you're not teaching as much." And I said, "Yeah, that's by design. So you guys, when I leave, they're already used to you guys teaching them. It's not always me teaching them. Plus, when I'm gone, it is always, if there was a question, they could just walk over to me and ask.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm not going to be there. Figure it out. So he took over the school, and a month later, he called me. His name's Jimmy Waller, and he's still running the school. He's done a very good job. He called me and said, I thought I knew how hard this was. I thought I knew how much work this was going to involve. And I have a whole new level of appreciation for everything you did for so many years. I said, oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Right.
Mm.
So I go there once a year for a week to do seminars. I do Zoom classes with Jimmy once a week. Um, I'm in contact with other black belts. One of my other black belts, Dean Mayo, is starting a class up in North Carolina. I have another one of my black belts that runs a small group up in Colorado. So I have black belts in different states. Some of them are small, very small groups. Other than like the New York school is a little bit bigger group. Doesn't matter to me if they have 3 students or 30 students, makes no difference. But it's gone pretty well. The interesting thing was some of the not as senior black belts calling me, and one of them said to me about 6 months after I left, he says, Sensei, don't take this the wrong way, but I almost think it was good that you left.
Mm.
And I said, oh, really? I said, why? He says, well, when you were there, if we had a question, we just walked over to you and you told us, you explained it to us in detail. But now when we have a question, we look over and you're not there. And then we all look at each other and go, okay, well, we got to figure this out. And he goes, for myself personally, I think I've gotten a lot better. And I said, well, now you know what I've been experienced for all these years. I had no one to look over to. Like
Mm.
there was no one I looked over to go, hey, am I doing this okay? No, it was me. I had to really be on top of myself. I had to really figure it out. I had to figure out how to present the material and do all that stuff. So for me, it's been, again, I wanted to move out here. It was the time in my life when I wanted to come out here. And, we planned it. We planned having the dojo built on our property, me and my wife. I'm blessed. My wife is, oh my God, right? I mean, to put up with me and all this martial arts crap for 46 years. I mean, we're together. I met her when she was 14 years old and I was 17. So we're together forever. We've been married for forever. She's a doctor, so she's, a lot smarter than I am. But she knows how important this is to me. And she trains too. She does Tai Chi. She still trains in Tai Chi Chuan. She's a second degree black belt in Isshin Ryu Karate, but she doesn't do Isshin Ryu. One of us had to stop and take care of the kids, and she
Mm.
had
Right.
her doctor job. But this is the perfect place for the later years in my life. Whether I have one student here or whether I have 100 students here, I don't
Mm.
care. I have no rent, right? The building's here; it's not going anywhere. Um, so yeah, I was confident that if those guys did what I told them to do before I left, that they'd be successful, and Jimmy would be very good at running the school, and he is. Um, and and I'm proud of that. Why wouldn't I be proud of that? It's like Jimmy's older than me, but it's like he's one of my children, right? He's gone out, he's been successful on his own. So yeah, so I think a lot of instructors hold people back too much.
Mm.
And I think that's a mistake. I think you should, like, so I'll give you, for instance, my teaching philosophy. So let's say you decide, Les Bubka says, hey, you know what? I'm moving to Arizona and I'm going to go train with this guy, Mike Calandra. So the first night, Les Bubka walks in and I start showing him the Isshin Ryu basics. And Les Bubka, he picks them up like this. So I'm going to show him a whole bunch of them. Then the next night he comes in, he's got the basics. I'm like, all right, I'm going to start showing him the first kata. And Les Bubka is going to get promoted faster because he's got some experience and he's training hard. And why should I slow him down? Why should I retard that process? I think that's a huge mistake where we have, oh, well, no, there has to be a minimum time. There has to be this. Okay, why? Where does it say that in the rule book? If
Mm.
someone's talented or someone's not even talented, but they're really working hard, why shouldn't they progress faster? So I've always been one, especially after I went on my own, where if someone is good and they work hard at it, I give them more. More and more and more. And so if some one of my students says to me, hey, I want to go out and do my own dojo, I said, go ahead. And there's been people that came to me and said, I have an opportunity. One guy came to me one time, and he'd been training in Isshin Ryu a very long time, actually longer than me, but he'd been training with me. And he says, I have this opportunity to rent space, but it's only 2 avenues away from you. So it's still in the same general neighborhood. He said, so I don't want to do it if you're going to be upset with me. And I said to him, I said, listen, you could open up a dojo next door to me and I wouldn't be upset.
Mm.
Now, what I was trying to tell him in a nice way that he was not capable of running a dojo.
Mhm.
I was trying to, like, he should have stopped and said, why would Sensei say I could open the dojo next door to him and
Mhm.
he'd be all right with it? Like, why did he say that? Right. And within 3 months, he was closed.
Mhm.
And, so again, I mean, but like in Jimmy's case, and he's, some of my senior guys, they're all still there. So they're all helping each other and working at it. And yeah, the dojo goes great. There's some young guys now coming up. So who knows? Maybe one of those guys will take over the dojo eventually. And if not, he'll close the doors. I mean, this is life. This is the way things go.
Mhm.
Like I had told them, I said, if you guys decide none of you want to take it over, well, I'm gonna close the doors. I mean, that's just the way it goes. You know, but yeah. So I think instructors, and I'm not saying like I don't make anything from that dojo in New York. There's no financial thing there. Like obviously when they bring me in for a seminar, they pay me,
Mhm.
but there's no like monthly thing that he's paying me. I don't have a franchise. I just have a student, right?
Mhm.
So I think instructors should try to like, you know, give their students a little more freedom. Like my first instructor told me I couldn't train with anybody else after I was already training with other people in other arts. And he says, you're not allowed to do that. And I said, okay, as per who? Well,
Mhm.
as per me. Okay, well, this is America, and I hate to break the news to you, but in America, I can do whatever I want, and I'm going to train with those other people because you don't teach those arts. So how am I
Mhm.
supposed to learn those arts from you when you don't know them? And so that was part of the downfall there. But again, trying to impose um, restrictions on me that I think would have severely hampered my martial arts growth. So like I have students that come to me and say, "Hey, Sensei, so and so is going to be in doing a seminar. Do you mind if we go?" I said, "Go right ahead. Go. You can go train whatever you want." I mean, if I'm confident in my abilities, why would I be afraid about letting my student go to train with someone else?
Mhm.
If you're afraid about letting your student go to train with someone else, it means you're not confident in your own abilities, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, my students are free to go and train with whoever they want,
Yeah,
you know?
my friends got the
So,
saying that, oh, don't go there because they might be much cooler than we are.
well, yeah. I mean, but again, I had guys that taught other martial arts rent my space at my dojo.
Mm.
So I had an Aikido sensei renting my dojo, and he rented my dojo for a few years. I had a few different Tai Chi people renting the dojo. I had a guy who taught knife fighting and pressure point fighting renting my dojo. And I let them put their flyers in the front of the dojo. I mean, because I just felt that the people that were going to go train with them were not the type of people that were going to come train with me.
Yeah,
And, I have this belief that the world's a very big place with a lot of people in it. I think there's plenty of students for all of us, you know.
exactly.
So, I when I opened the dojo in Floral Park, there was a dojo on the next street, and they did, I guess they did like Filipino martial arts. I didn't know the guy, but I opened the dojo. But one of his students eventually stopped by the dojo, and he had said to his teacher when I was opening the school, he said to his teacher, "What is this guy crazy? He's opening a school on the next street from us. We've been here for years. He's not gonna, he's gonna close. He's not gonna be able to stay open." And the teacher knew who I was, and he says, "Oh, no, no, that guy's been in the area for a really, really long time. He's coming with a group of students. He already has students." And eventually he closed. He closed his place, but not because of me, but
Mhm.
because whatever, again, I think running a dojo is one of the hardest businesses there is. That's why I don't recommend doing it full time. I think you're better off doing it small scale, renting a place a couple of nights a week, teaching at a community center, doing something at your house. Um, I think that's a lot safer and a lot less of a risk,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, we're training in the big center, but I'm just renting the room. We've got the BJJ guys, we've got Muay Thai, we've got boxing, and everybody's full, you know.
Right.
So everybody's happy. I'm training in the BJJ there. The BJJ guys coming to us sometimes training, and everybody's happy.
Yeah. And again, like, I said it all the time. You, people need to do what makes them happy,
Mm,
you know? Um, if you're doing martial arts and you're aggravated all the time or you're caught up in political bullshit, um, you know, why are you doing it? Like,
mm,
if it's not making you happy, why are you doing it? Like me, like right now it's Saturday afternoon in Arizona, and tomorrow I'm going to come out. I got to film. I'm going to film a couple of videos, and I'm going to train. Um, and I train pretty much every day, um, because I enjoy it. I mean, I really enjoy it, and I don't just train martial arts. I also do kettlebell. I do some dumbbell work. There's some other types of exercises I do, and that's to keep my body strong. I mean, as I'm getting older, I have to take care of the body. It's as simple as that. Um, you know, but I really enjoy it. So again, like my question would be to certain people, are you happy still? Are you happy doing martial arts? What makes you happy about it? Look at and question yourself. And if the things that make you happy, um, are not, necessarily good things, well, you probably have a problem, you know.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think if more people worried about themselves, like, I have an open door policy here. Someone will call me and say, "Hey, I'm in Arizona. Could I come by the dojo?" Of course, right? They come, they train, whatever. And the other thing we have here is we set the house up where people will fly out here and they will spend anywhere from a week to 10 days training. We have a set fee we charge. They live at the house. We feed them. I pick them up at the airport and we train as much as they want to train. So if they want to train every day, all day, I'm out here with them training every day, all day. And if one day they say, "Hey, could we go on a hike, a beautiful hike in this great Arizona you live in?" I take them on a hike. One of my guys is coming out at the end of February for 10 days. He's staying here. Another guy's coming out probably in March. He'll stay for usually 4 or 5. Um, so we also set the house up that way, which is nice for us. It helps, makes a little bit of money.
mm,
But it's also good for these people because they can come out and get intense training. And that's what
sure.
they want. They want to come out and work as much as they can in a short amount of period. They'll attend my regular classes, but then there's a lot of one-on-one with me. So we do that a lot, and a lot of people take advantage of that. So from a martial arts standpoint, I'm about as happy as I can be.
Mm.
I couldn't be happier with what I'm doing. So, you
Yeah,
know,
that sounds
um,
amazing.
so yeah, so it's great.
Sounds amazing. Um, sen
So how many kids you
Sensei,
have? How many
two,
kids you have?
two,
Two.
two, yeah, 8
Boy
and
and a
6.
girl?
A boy and a girl, 8 and 6.
Who's
Full-time
oldest?
work. Son. Yeah,
Son. Okay.
son just started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He likes that. He's also
Okay,
obsessed
good.
with drama. My younger daughter, I thought she's gonna be into
Okay.
wrestling, but she's on football.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I'm
All
trying to
right.
not
Listen.
force him. And
Yeah. All my children trained. My wife was adamant about it also. Which was good. My wife was like, "No, I want them to be able to defend themselves."
Mm,
So even my daughter, all of them trained up until they went off to college. Now they're really not training too much. My oldest son is a police officer. He's 30, so my kids are obviously a little bit older than yours. Um, but yeah, um, so yeah, I mean it's interesting. You'll see as your kids grow up. But the biggest thing is that they're involved in something.
mm.
If they're involved in something that they can focus on, is very good for them.
Yeah,
And if they're exposed to good people, you know.
mm. Yeah, that's our policy that they need to do something. They have to do sport and they have to some in inter not intelligent but intellectual stuff. So they got
Yeah.
that development and the supportive group of people is always better than just sitting on a bench somewhere in a park and drinking beer.
Or playing a video game.
Yeah, yeah. Although, now now playing the video games, you can make a lot of money. My friend's son is doing
Yeah,
200K
yeah, yeah.
playing games. So,
Right.
which one we
It's
doing now,
crazy.
right?
It's crazy.
Um,
Right,
Sensei,
right.
if you can let us know where to find your podcast, your retreats, and everything you do, where people can find and support you.
So, my website is seishinkanwest.com, which is SEISHINKAN West, WEST.com. You can hook up there with the YouTube channel and the Facebook page. If you put my name in, Michael Calandra, Calandra is all A's, Calandra. My YouTube channel will come up. The podcast is the Martial Truth Podcast. Um, if you're doing Isshin I also run Master Shimabuku's webpage for the association. I've been running that since 1994. Um, I mean, the Seishin Con West page is a good way to get in contact with me. My email's there and everything else. You can get me on Facebook. Um, Michael Calandra. Again, that's what it is. It's always my name. No titles, no nothing, just my name, right? Um, so you know, um, yeah, it's interesting. I did a podcast with a guy from Australia, and then all of a sudden, I was getting a lot of friend requests from people from Australia because they saw the podcast in Australia. And I'm sure after this one, I'll probably get some more friend requests from people in Europe. Although I do have a lot of friends in Europe. I have a lot of Isshinru friends in Europe and other martial arts friends in Europe. So I do have a lot of friends in Europe. And I've been to Europe a bunch. I've been to London probably 7 times. So I was
Oh,
going every year, and I may be coming there again in the near future. So if I'm going to be coming there again in the near future, I'll let you know. Maybe we can meet in person.
oh,
But
that would be
yeah,
great
and
because
love for Pete.
I'm not that far from London, so
Yeah. And I love for people to subscribe to the channel. We want the channel to grow. I want it to be something where traditional martial arts people can come and see a lot of different videos. We have over 1,600 videos in the channel, a lot of historic videos. Um, not just Ishinru, not just the arts I do. We have video for all kinds of martial arts. And I want it to be where everybody takes advantage of it. And yeah. So
awesome. Thank you for your time, and I hope to speak to you soon.
no problem. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.